first bill is going to be mental health restoration. Thank you for coming tonight to our Candidates Forum. We would like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would rise, and Deb Thompson will lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Mary Liverati. I am a co-president with the Carson City League of Women Voters, or actually we're the League of Women Voters of Northern Nevada. It's my pleasure tonight to be your moderator. I thank you for all coming tonight. So we will have our forum for Congressional District 2. The State Board of Education will be next. The Board of Regents, District 9, and then Assembly District 20. I thought it was 40. Is it 20? 40, yeah. I have 20 here, but it's 40. Okay, good. Well-educated group, thank you. The forum is presented by the League of Women Voters of Northern Nevada in partnership with Sierra Nevada Forums, the American Association of University Women, which you might know as AAUW, the Capital Branch, PFLAG, the Carson Region Chapter, and the Nevada Appeal is streaming this live on their website, nevadaappeal.com, and we appreciate their media sponsorship for this event. Our nonpartisan groups organize these election forums to get the facts to the public on a variety of issues and in turn help voters to make informed decisions. The League is dedicated to ensuring that all eligible voters have the opportunity and the information to exercise their right to vote. Sierra Nevada Forum provides citizens with fact-based, verifiable information to assist them in making well-informed decisions on issues of importance to our community and beyond. AAUW advances equity for women and girls throughout advocacy, education, philanthropy, and research. PFLAG provides support, education, and advocacy by uniting people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, also LGBTQ, with families, friends, and allies. I have some housekeeping thing I'd like to go through with you before we get started. You might notice some of us have these stickers on that say Vote 411. That is an initiative by the League of Women Voters US to make sure that all the different races that people are voting for have information about the candidates. So if you go to, or if you want, just pick up a sticker if you don't want to remember this. On the table where you first came in, these stickers are available. Feel free to grab them as you leave tonight. So 411 has the information that candidates, we put information that the candidates supply on the website. So we don't reword it, we just mainly put it on there so you can see how they answered questions regarding the elections and where they stand on the issues. Stop by the sponsor tables if you can. There's some information on the tables in the foyer about each of those groups that are helping us partnership tonight to bring this candidates forum to you. There are donation envelopes. You might have noticed on the first table there was a picture that people could put donations in, but there's also envelopes. So if you wanted to specifically give money to the League, there's a League envelope. If you want to give money specifically to AAUW, there's an envelope. If you want to give money to PFLAG, there's an envelope for them. So, and if people put them in the general donation jar, we're just going to split them among the partnership groups. Be very as fair and equal as we can be. Don't forget that we have 2 more candidate forums. Tomorrow night we have one which will cover local candidates, including the mayor's race and the Board of Supervisors, and the local Board of Education, or school board, I guess they call it here on local level. And then on Thursday, October 18th, which is next Tuesday, a week from tonight, we also have one that will deal with the 4 questions that will be on the ballot. So the 4 statewide questions. The local night, tomorrow night, will also deal with Carson City's question on the tax initiative, so the gas tax. If you are a nightlife person and when you get done here, you might want to go someplace else, I just wanted to announce that the the Capital City Arts Initiative is having an event going on over at the Brick. So there are bookmarks with the Capital City Arts Initiative, but they've invited anybody. They were sorry that we have a conflicting schedules tonight, but do feel free to stop by there on your way home and say hello. Okay, with that, let's get down to business here. So you'll notice that we have volunteers that will be wandering up and down throughout the audience. They're going to give you little cards. You already may have picked them up when you came in. But if you have a question for a candidate, please ask for a card, write your question. They have pencils available also. And then they will be collected, and then we will read the questions to the candidates. Please do not direct any question to a specific candidate. Each question will be answered by all the candidates, and they will take turns. We're going to rotate so that the first person isn't always having to answer first. So you'll all get that chance. I know that's exciting, but let's see, what else? I've got to make sure I make this whole checklist. Okay. When we collect the questions, what we do is we put them together, group, so that we don't ask the same question over, and there will be a variety of topics that will be discussed tonight. So we do have some volunteers here from our associations that are Modena Roll and Nancy Stiles, who will be sorting and grouping questions so we can try to get to as many issues as possible throughout the night. So you may not hear your specific question the way it's worded, but somebody else may have worded it. Maybe it's a little clearer or something, and so we'll try to get through as many questions as we can. So each candidate tonight is going to have 2 minutes to do an opening statement, and then we'll have the question started, and each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the question. And we'll just, like I said, we're going to try to get as many questions in as we can. At the end, about 4 minutes before the end, we will have 1 minute for a closing statement. So any candidate feels like there's something you want to say, but you didn't get to say it during this, that's your opportunity to leave that great impression with the audience. The way this will work, we have a timer in the front. Our timer machine didn't arrive, so we've got the old-fashioned colored sheets of construction paper. Perfect. Old school here. Okay. So we've got green, of course, is go. When you've got 30 seconds left, it's upside down, Nancy, but that means you've got 30 seconds left. And when she puts up red, stop. And if you don't stop, you're going to get my very mean mother look. So you don't want that tonight.
That's not fair. I'm closest.
Okay. This evening's forum will be repeated on Carson Access TV, channel 190. Oh, okay. Let's X that out then. Okay. We want to thank the audience for being here at the Brewery Arts Center Performance Hall, and our audience watching online or on TV, well, I guess not on TV, for participating in this important process of our democracy. Our democracy is very important, and the League, besides providing information, has started a new campaign. All the candidates will have a little bookmark at their place. It's what we're calling our commitment to civility in politics. And so it tells you what we consider being civil in politics. You know, the usual stuff like be respectful and compassionate, embrace civility in public discourse, act and speak with truth and integrity, take responsibility for personal actions, put the public good above partisan politics, and promote transparency and good governance. And what's new this year, when the legislature meets in February here in Carson City, we're actually going to give awards out throughout the session for people that we feel are really demonstrating those principles. So you'll probably hear more about that as the legislative session. Okay. All righty. Well, without further ado, we're going to get started. I think we will start with Congressman Amodei. Will you start with your opening statement?
Great. Thanks, Mary, and thank you to the League for doing this. You've been doing it for a few years, and I've been a participant in that when it was at the community center, although I must say, don't tell anybody in the Brewery Arts Center, but the last time I was in this room, I think, was for a funeral. So I hope we're changing that tonight. As I walk down here today, walking through the streets of the community I grew up in, it's a pretty humbling thing to think that you're walking down here to the old St. Teresa's and doing something like this. So it's nice to be here. It's a tough time to be in Washington, D.C. easy target. I noticed you're not giving any awards in Congress for people to act like that. You've probably started in the appropriate place. But despite that, I think when you look at the record over the last 61 months since I've been given the responsibility of representing Nevada, we hit the ground running. And while some of those national issues are very, very sticky, we've concentrated on what can we do to move the ball forward in Nevada. We've moved legislation, on Nevada specifically, water for the Truckee Meadows, some lands bills for our communities, for our Native American tribes. We've added amendments that help the veterans process that were ultimately adopted, got more attention onto our Vero, our claims offices in Reno and the hospital in Reno, and basically tried through oversight to make sure that those executive branch agencies, which have such a large influence over our lives here in Nevada, are doing a good job of customer service and trying to solve problems without saying how a bill becomes a law. So we think on balance, when you've looked at that stuff, that we have focused on the folks that hire you for this job and made sure that we always know who the boss is. And then finally, we've returned over $500,000 of your taxpayers' money to the U.S. Treasury in money that we saved in how we did our operation, because in this day and age, leading by example can be a hard thing to find. So with that, I'm looking forward to talking to my other folks here on the stage, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Great. Thank you very much. Our next candidate is Chip Evans. Chip, you've got your two minutes.
Well, thank you. And again, Mary, thank you, and please extend my thanks to all the groups sponsoring tonight. And welcome, Carson. My last experience on this stage was actually out there watching my daughter perform here. She did a lot of acting, and it was a good place to start. She's acting in a play in Kentucky as we speak, so it was a good place. Hey, I'm not well known compared to an incumbent congressman, so let me introduce myself a little bit. I'm a businessman. I'm a family man. I was a radio talk show host for 5 years. I'm jumping into this race because I want to maneuver our government so we're putting people first again and getting stuff done in Congress. And why? Because we need to rebuild the middle class in the United States. This is about economics. This is about our lifestyle. This is about the heartbeat of Nevada. And on top of that, I'm focused on some issues that are just really critical. And among those that I want to focus on the most is bringing good paying jobs to Northern Nevada. We have so many opportunities, and I suspect I'll get to express those a little further along. I also want to focus on getting big money and dark money out of politics. It pollutes the whole system. It brings this whole operation down. It's one of the reasons Congress is not making the progress that it should. Third, I want to make sure that we protect and strengthen Social Security.
Chip, let me just interrupt for a minute. Would people please silence their cell phones, either put it on vibrate or turn it off completely? Or so you'll add a little time to Chip. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's...
I'll call you back, Mom. So, four of the burning issues in my own bailiwick. Good jobs here for Northern Nevada. Second, I really want to get dark money and big money out of politics, and we've got to address that. Third, I want to make sure that Social Security is not only protected but expanded and secured for our kids. There's no reason to believe they're going to have it any easier than we did. And last and not least at all is we have got to push the people out of the way that are climate change deniers, say follow or get out of the way, and address climate change head on now. It's important for our grandkids, it's important for us now, and the government plays an important part in creating not only the safety of the United States, our security of the United States, as well as the prosperity of our businesses and our ability to function as a society. So climate change needs to get addressed now. So with that, thank you again, and I'm glad you're all here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. And I will ask you to hold your applause when we get to the questions, only because we want to get as many questions in as we can. Our next candidate is John Everhart.
Good evening, voters. Thank you for having me here tonight. Running for Congress is a pain in the neck because of all the questionnaires I get. I filled out dozens and dozens of candidate questionnaires, but I have yet to see the question, what are you going to do for future generations? So these are the issues I'd like you to think about. One, big money, Wall Street, billionaires, global corporations, they fund our political system. And the Republicans and the Democrats are not going to bite the hand that feeds them. The big money club thinks only about quarterly profits. not about future generations. 2, even the Pentagon has said that climate change is a threat to our national security. The oceans are getting warmer, melting the ice caps, melting the glaciers. The oceans are sucking in the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, becoming more acidic, killing the coral reefs, diminishing the marine life. 3, it's not right to continue deficit spending and pass our $19 trillion deficit and national debt on to the backs of the future generations. 4, the war hawks are beating the drums to go to war with Syria and Russia. Well, guess what? Under our Constitution, only Congress can declare war on another country. And if Congress wants to go to war with Syria and Russia, they need to explain to the American people why we should risk a nuclear war to overthrow another government. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have candidate Drew Knight next.
Well, I'd like to thank all the groups that are involved in this tonight. I have a high regard for all 3 groups that are sponsoring this evening. A little bit about myself before I get into policies. I was born in Ohio. I moved out here in 1980 when I was 14. I'm a high school dropout, and I'm also a UNR graduate. I have lived in approximately 15 different states. I've lived in Ohio, Louisiana, New Orleans, California, Iowa. I've moved around a lot in my life, and I've seen the same things all over the country, the same issues. And whether they be income inequality, social justice, it's pretty much the same everywhere. So that being said, I'd like to say thank you again for being here, and let's get to the issues, shall we?
Great. All right. So as I said before, we're going to start. We'll go down. Mr. Amadei will start, and then next question we'll start with Mr. Evans, and we'll move down the line. So we'll start with a good topic to get things going. What, if any, changes should be made to health care, including the Affordable Care Act and Medicare? Mr. Amadei?
These are 1-minuters, right?
Yeah. We need
Okay.
the condensed version.
Hang on tight, we're going to go fast. Do we need health care reform in this country? Yes, we do. Are there some good things in the Affordable Care Act? Yes, there are. Is the ultimate answer to our health care problems and ensuring our uninsured in this country what is on the books now? No, it isn't. For instance, if you're going to concentrate on Nevada, we're a small health insurance market. What works in larger cities, in larger states, in larger urban areas isn't the reality here. We have an access problem in Nevada, even in Las Vegas. And so when you talk about what we do to ensure Nevada's uninsured population, you have to go into how do you do the high-risk pools, how do you do block grants for states, for instance, in order to take care of those folks. But quite frankly, to disenfranchise those folks who provide it as part of your employment package is a mistake. There are self-insurers, large self-insurers in this community and in other communities in the state that have done a great job on providing that, and we ought to go to them for the answers. Thank you. Good evening, and next contestant, please.
Mr. Evans?
Well, I think in the biggest possible view, the Affordable Care Act is a big step in the right direction. It's not perfect. No big piece of legislation is. The question is how quickly can we begin to address the known issues? Consider for a moment, this program, for the 3 decades before the ACA was enacted, the average annual increase in healthcare costs was 9%. Since this program was introduced, it went down to 4%. It's creeping back up, but it's beginning to make a difference. We need to separate out in our discussions with ourselves the difference between healthcare costs, which are largely driven by pharmacies and price of pharmaceutical medicines right now, and insurance. The ACA was insurance reform, and it's not enough. And what we're seeing is despite a slowing of medical costs, we have soaring insurance premiums, not for people under the program, mind you. About 70% of the people going to be covered by the ACA this year will have premiums of less than $75 a month. Now, that's not my experience, mind you, and not a lot of people here. But we need to not throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Thank you. Mr. Everhart?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's proper for any person to die in this country because they cannot afford health care. But we have several different kind of systems. Our U.S. military has a health care system that's almost completely socialism. The Veterans Administration has a health care system, and some veterans have to pay in to it, and some veterans don't. We have Medicare, we have Obamacare, and we have the for-profit system. So I'm thinking we might be able to sit down and look at all these systems and come up to with something that's going to work for all the American people. Thank you.
Did you want me to repeat the question? Did I hear? Oh, sorry. Mr. Knight.
Yeah, you can repeat it for me, please.
Oh, did you forget by the time I got there? What, if any, changes should be made to health care, including the Affordable Care Act and Medicare? I don't have time to get to Medicare, but
Okay.
go do your
Well,
best.
in my opinion, the only possible way that healthcare is ever going to work in this system for everybody is to go to a single-payer Medicaid for all. We've seen since the Affordable Care Act how corrupt and abusive the pharmaceutical industry is in this country, and it's very easy to look at the latest examples, Martin Shkreli, the insulin incident. It's the pharmaceutical industry and the insurance companies are making the rules, and they are obviously corrupting this system. The only way to get affordable, good health care is if we can negotiate drug prices with these companies, like California is trying to do right now, to get the same prices that the Veterans Administration is getting. So, very simply put, I would completely get rid of the Affordable Care Act and move to a single-payer system. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next question, and we're going to start with Mr. Evans this time.
Yes.
Will you support legislation or legislative action on campaign finance reform, including action to overturn Citizens United?
Absolutely. As I mentioned in my opening, this is one of my biggest priorities. In Congress, I want to resurrect the type of campaign finance reform laws that will pass the muster in the courts. We simply need to diminish the influence of dark money, especially, and big money, so that we restore our democracy. I will support any action moving toward either a workaround for Citizens United or any legislation associated with that. I will also support, at the end of the day, a constitutional amendment to simply change the rules and have the court abide by that. So this is a huge issue. It's one that we need to address. Our democracy's at stake, and I want to be part of that.
Thank you. Mr. Everhart.
Yes, when you think about $5 billion for the presidential race, and the average congressman, now this is not our congressman, but the average congressman has to spend $1 to $2 million to get elected. The average senator, $10 to $15 million to get elected. This isn't right. So I would like to see Congress propose a constitutional amendment to send out to the states that says that corporations are not persons under the Constitution, and that money is not free speech, so that we can at least have reasonable standards for our elections and get the big money out of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Knight.
I'm going to have to agree with these two. It is one of the most disgusting things that's happened in our political system. Citizens United states that corporations are people. Well, when I see Texas execute one, then I'll believe that.
Okay. Mr. Amadei, your turn.
Well, I was a little upset with Drew playing the H card right away, but you've redeemed yourself right now. Way to go. I like that. I'm going to use that with some of the Texas people I know. Listen, John was right. We're blessed in this neighborhood in that you don't have to raise $1 million. The rap on me as a person who's in politics is he's a bad fundraiser. And it's true. You look up the FEC reports, we raise less than $1 a person, significantly less than $1 a person that's in the district. And my feeling is like, listen, if you can't get people to support you because they think you're doing a good job, I don't think any amount of money is going to buy it from them. And so we've gone forward that way. I'm very open-minded on whatever the changes are, campaign finance reform, because I have witnessed for 61 months my colleagues sitting there going, hey, we got to raise, you know, I mean, there's this obsession with more money, when it ought to be, you know, maybe I'm a dinosaur, but it's like, listen, if you're doing a good job, they'll support you, and if you're not, I don't think money's going to fix it. So all hands on deck, whatever makes sense, and thank you for Northern Nevada being a place where you don't need to be a millionaire to run.
All right, our next question, we're going to start with you, Mr. Everhart. What actions, if any, would you support to address global warming?
Is away from the fossil fuels. Now, I know that there's a big industry out there that doesn't like that, but we can move to renewables, solar, wind, wave. In Nevada, we got geothermal at our ears. And there's also a reactor called liquid fluoride thorium reactor, which can generate electricity, and it's a safe way to generate electricity until science can give us a commercial form of the fusion reactor. So if you go to my website, everhartforcongress.com, I list all the information you need to know that will hopefully show you that there is a way to get past this fossil fuel industry so we can go and reduce the carbon dioxide emissions into the atmosphere. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Knight, your turn.
Very big issue for me, and especially living in the state of Nevada. As he said, we have access to most of the clean energy sources you can have. We should be leading the world in clean energy here. Although we've got Tesla in town now, and there's Faraday moving into Las Vegas, very big issue in Nevada. We could very well be leading the world in clean energy technology and sources. But obviously we are not. I'm going to go ahead and blame that on a Republican legislator that we have here. And as a congressman, I will be laying down a good foundation for this state to move in that direction. Thank you.
Well, and thank you for that shout out, Drew. I appreciate that. In order to help you along with that promise,
For the folks at home, this is Mr. Amade answering the question.
Oh, thank you.
Go forward.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So to lay that foundation for you, I can tell you that I've recently joined the Climate Change Caucus, which is a group of people. In order to join it, you have to have a Republican and a Democrat come in at the same time. So Representative Susan Bonamici from Oregon and I were the most recent two in. I believe there is climate change going on. The discussion I've had with those folks, because it's an outfit that's focused on, so it's going to cycle is a part of what we're doing. So we're looking forward to going deeper into that before Drew takes over, and try to come and say, okay, what is the cause of the symptoms, so we can focus our efforts on that. So I'm a believer in all hands on deck. We've been supportive of R&D money for all those other forms. We have said, however, if you need money to sell into the grid, that's something we want to look at, because ultimately we want those forms to be competitive in the grid so that people can afford to buy those in the same way as others, and we're making progress that way. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Evans, your turn.
Well, you know, with every challenge comes an opportunity. We have the opportunity here in Nevada to turn this into a huge job creation program. We must put a cork on our fossil fuel use. My suggestion, my intent in Congress is to stop fracking where it is, turn the pendulum the other way, start working on green, renewable, sustainable energy, and work the transitions that are going to be needed in the industry for jobs. But we have such an opportunity here if we just grab it. Nevada, as Drew said, and we all know, has the greatest opportunity to lead in this charge. So I will be focused on supporting the green energy sector. I believe we should halt fracking for now, and especially in Nevada, where I want to know what the chemicals are, because our water table is so critical to us. But I want to stop that for now and turn it back. And I also support lowering the standards again on emissions from engines. Every time we do that, we wind up being better off after all the wailing and gnashing of teeth that we're going to crash some industry, which just hasn't happened. So those are approaches I would take.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Knight, you're going to begin this question. Who are you voting for president and why? And has anything in the last week changed or confirmed your decision?
Actually, this is a very easy question for me. In Nevada, we have a none of the above box, and that will be the one I'll be checking most definitely. They're two of the most disgusting candidates that I've ever seen run for office. Well, I can look down at the end of the table, and I'm sure you all know what I'm thinking about Mr. Trump's candidate over here at the end of the table. I'm going to go ahead and just pass this one along down to him right now.
Well, thank you. Mr. Amodei,
Was
you're
he talking about me? Well, listen, first of all, we don't have Mother Teresa and Gandhi running against each other this time. And I agree with you on the whatever. Should what came out on Friday be part of your consideration in who you vote for? Absolutely, it should be. Now, if that's all you want to consider, then your mind is made up, and I respect that. But some of the issues we've talked about here before, when you talk about what's going on with the Affordable Care Act, what's going on with energy policy, what's going on with foreign policy, what's going on with the economy when you look at where we've generated jobs and not, are things that I think ought to go in the mix. And as I said in my letter the other day, where I said, hey, listen, I'm still on board with Mike Pence and Donald Trump. It's like, I'm not going to vote for none of the above, because guess what? Somebody's going to be in the Oval Office on January 20th. It ain't going to be none of the above. And so maybe it's the lesser of two evils, but I'm for a change in direction. And I'm in keeping with your guys' creed, I'm not going to go into, oh, here's all the terrible things she's done. I'm just saying there isn't the Virgin Mary on this race for you to run into his or her loving arms. So somebody's going to take over the job, and who is it that you want? Do you want to go the same direction, or do you want to change? Thanks for that snowball question. I mean, no big deal, huh?
Thank you. Mr. Evans.
I'll be voting for Hillary Clinton. And not because I'm a big team player.
Please hold your
It's
applause.
because, when I look at it, there's a thing called qualifications, there's called fitness, there's called the ability to tell it straight and know how to get things done on the world stage. I appreciate everybody's frustrations, and I share them. That said, sending a bull into the china shop to break all the china is not a way to make your shop run better. So I'm not for that. And I think this is an important distinction. We're about to put somebody at the head of the table to be the leader of the world by extension, and we just can't afford the sort of temperament and the misguided personal character and stuff that comes with the other major candidate. So I'll be supporting Hillary Clinton, and proudly so.
Thank you. Mr. Everhart.
Congress has an approval rating of, 8 to 12%, and Congress has been run by the Republican and Democratic parties for about 150 years. So I'm going to vote third party. Now, I don't argue with anybody about the lesser of the evils, and I'm afraid of Trump, I'm going to vote Hillary, and I'm afraid of Hillary, I don't argue about that. But what I'd like to see someday is for the voters to send some third-party candidates to Congress. So at least I think if we got 7%, 7% in Congress that are third-party candidates, don't have to answer to Republican leadership, Democrat leadership, big money, then they can hold those two parties accountable. Now, I like our congressman. He's a very ethical man, and he treats me very well, and he listens when I go to his town hall meetings, and he's honest with me. So I'm not against him personally. I'm just against the two-party dictatorship. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. This next question, Mr. Amodei, you'll start. Is it true that Medicare cannot negotiate drug prices with the drug companies? And if so, are you in favor of changing that? And how would you do that?
Well, it's true in some instances that they can, in many instances. Should it be changed? Yes, it should be. But like many of the issues these days, what you get is you get a 2-minute soundbite as opposed to a 60-second one. And so that's one of those things where you say, listen, prescription regimens of treatment in many cases are much less expensive than going into surgery. So let's promote those. Medicare ought to be promoting the fact that these drugs are available if they keep me out of the hospital out of the ambulatory surgery center, those sorts of things, because it saves costs for Medicare. So, as a guy who's not a big fan of the government ought to be involved in anything, this is one of those areas because of people like me. Everybody else on the stage is too young, but as the baby boom generation gets older, healthcare is going to be 20% of our economy. We need to start focusing on that. It's kind of related to the ACA, so that we can say, hey, we're still the leader in the free world, but we're taking care of this from a 360-degree view, so I'm in. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Evans?
You know, when you look at medical costs, it tends to fall most heavily on our seniors. And the idea of unbridled pharmaceutical costs brings us all to the state of despair, because people on Social Security are coming up with drug bills a month that are higher than their rents. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is not capitalism working. This is not any system working. I will absolutely get behind and support, if not propose, laws to control drug costs, particularly those that are derived from government-paid-for research. This is a payback to the American people, and we must protect our own citizens from runaway costs. There's a thing called a reasonable profit, and there's a thing that's called gouging, and we need to know the difference and be able to draw that hard line. So I will support any effort to put some controls on drug control costs, and yes, we have very little ability to negotiate at the moment in too many of our healthcare systems.
Thank you. Mr. Everhart?
Well, we're told that the free market system can really help things out, so the Veterans Administration is allowed to negotiate for the drug prices, so why won't they let Medicare negotiate for the drug prices? Why won't they let us go to Canada and buy our prescription medicine? And why won't they let us go to Mexico and buy our prescription medicine? So if we want the free market system to work, then we've got to take down those barriers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Knight?
Oh, I am most definitely for being able to negotiate with pharmaceutical companies. Like I said before, I am very much in favor of going to a single-payer system where we can negotiate. And, of course, this all is a problem now because of the Republican Party that pushed this through during George Bush's administration, and I am very, very firmly against such things, and I would definitely go forward and make drug prices much, much cheaper. One thing that would go along with this is general health care. We need to convince people to be a little healthier.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe we'll get into that a little bit more
Was he
later.
looking
Sorry, I
at me?
got cut off.
Or me.
Why were you looking at me when you said people got to be healthier? Don't play the weight card in this thing.
All right, the next question, Mr. Evans, you're going to go first.
Yes.
So the question is, how will you work with members of all parties to pass legislation that is important to all people regardless of party affiliation? And if you're currently in office, if you would give an example of what you might have accomplished working across the aisle would be appreciated.
Okay. Well, first off, I think it's about relationships. It's about being honest brokers. It's about being able to negotiate to a win-win solution where you understand what's at stake for the other person, they understand what's at stake for you, and you look for the common ground. Tough job, not easy. It takes a special skill. It takes a devotion of your time to do that as well. And one of the saddest things I heard when I went back to the Capitol not so long ago was they used to come up in the trams together and talk to each other on the way, and now it's kind of quiet in the elevators. They're just not talking to each other. It's one of the things that's broken in Congress is the partisanship, and we've just got to break through that. Now, many of you know I was a radio talk show host for 5 years on a very conservative network, and it turns out I could talk to those folks, and they could talk to me, and over a little bit of time, we could find common ground, and that's the skill that we need. I've negotiated contracts with many businesses in different cultures, and think I know that gift that it takes to negotiate to a win.
Thank you. Mr. Everhart?
Well, the approach first of all, Congressman Mark has a wonderful town hall meeting for veterans every 3 months to deal with veterans issues, and he does an outstanding job, and he listens, and all kinds of issues are brought up that I didn't even know about, and I'm a veteran. I would expand that to have a town hall meeting for all voters every 3 months to talk about all the issues and all the legislation before Congress. And then, when a consensus was arrived at, I would take that to Congress and stand on the floor and hold my ground for what my district wants. So hopefully my congressman will think about that and have a veterans town hall meeting and then a voters town hall meeting.
I will.
Please, we're almost done with this panel.
I'm voting for John. I hope you win.
Thank you, and Mr. Knight, your turn.
Thank you. I've never held a public office, so reaching across the aisle is not something that I've had to do in the political arena, but as an independent candidate, I'll be standing in the middle of the aisle, so it shouldn't be too hard for me to reach from both sides.
Thank you. Mr. Amadei.
Well, I mean, great question. I can just tell you that you don't get bills signed by Barack Obama unless you've got bipartisan support. So when you talk about the Native Nations, where we've taken care of most recently, you talk about the Fish Springs Ranch Pyramid Lake settlement to bring water to the Truckee Meadows, you talk about the Northern Nevada Development Act. It's like, listen, those don't get to Barack Obama's desk if you're out there being the uber Republican or the uber whatever in this Congress. So I think we've demonstrated that ability. We've worked issues, veterans issues on amendments, where it's like, listen, I'm not doing this because I'm a Republican. And you know, I look at your card and it's like, these are neat things. In my mind, anybody who runs on being the uber anything, quite frankly, doesn't have a platform. And so when you look at that and you go, what have you done to reach across the aisle? It's like, I think we've demonstrated that and have successes to point to where you've got Barack Obama's signature on a bill that your name's on the top. That's the ultimate evidence of the ability to do that. Now, fortunately, our Nevada issues are ones that don't get caught up in the other stuff. But when you talk about, here's an example, immigration reform. I broke with my party and said, listen, the solutions are easy if you political people would get out of the way, and been criticized by some in my party for doing that. So I think you have to have the fortitude to say, I've studied the issue, I think it's right, and it doesn't fit within the Republican talking points. We've done that for 5 years. If hired again, we'll continue to do it for 2 more.
Thank you. Well, we've come to that time of the evening where we have to ask you to do your closing statements. I guess since we've gotten over to Mr. Evans, we'll let you, no, who was last? Actually, it would be Mr. Everhart would go first and get to start with your 1-minute closing statement.
My 1-minute close. I just want to emphasize the fact that if the voters only give the Congress an 8% approval rating, 12% approval rating, that means the voters are responsible for what goes on in Congress. So one solution is to vote for third parties. And the other solution is to ask our members of Congress to hold voter town hall meetings every 3 months so we can discuss the issues, put the pressure on them, and hold them accountable. And I want to hold them accountable for the big money in politics, climate change that might ruin the planet, the debt, the national debt at $19 trillion. Everybody here is on the hook for $70,000, and the constant wars that they keep waging that don't seem to do much good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knight.
I'm going to have to go ahead and agree with just about everything he just said. This ridiculous debt that we have, the corruption of both parties is ridiculous, especially being in this process now. I've seen how it is on both sides, the Democrats and the Republicans. It's gross. So I think we need to move toward electing some more third-party candidates and hold some of these people accountable because, like he said, Congress has a terrible approval rating, and I think we need to get some more people in there with some better voices to run our government. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Amadei.
You know, Drew, gross is the nicest thing I've been called in the last 5 days, so I want to thank you publicly. You know what, when John talks about accountability, November 8th, October 22nd, this election cycle will be the 4th time I've been on the ballot in the last 62 months by then. That's an average of about every 15 months. You've had an opportunity to say, Amadei, get out of here, or Amadei, we're going to give you 2 more years. That's unprecedented accountability to the people who hire you for this job to represent them. I think that's a good thing. It ought to be that way. People say, maybe you ought to go 4 years. Like, you know what? When it's this often, you don't have time to say, I'm going to come back and be nice to you and hope to God that you vote for me. You have to perform every day. This is the only seat out of 535 on both ends of the building whose only reason for waking up in the morning is this part of the country. That's a big responsibility. We think we have gone forward in that manner and said we've taken care of business in Nevada. We've tried to make you proud on what we've done on other stuff. No ethics stuff, no scandals, all that other sort of stuff. So if you agree with that and that you've gotten good value for your buck, we'd appreciate your support.
Thank you. Mr. Evans.
Well, as the statistics have been shared with us, Congress is broken. We know this. I think it's time for a change. The composition that we have in there now of obstructionists and hyper-partisanship needs to be swept away, and a new climate needs to be created so we can get things done. The current Congress, and particularly the Republican leadership, is focused on big corporations and focused on the wealthy and focused on the benefit of just winning partisan arguments as opposed to being focused on the people. And now's the time when we've got to reclaim our democracy. We need to get back in there and get people who are going to listen, that are not only going to listen and do all the jiving and talking with you and all that sort of stuff, but they're going to go back and vote your interests. And I'm going to show up to vote. I'm going to vote your interests. I want to be there to get stuff done. I want things to move forward. I'm a businessman. That's the only way business works. You identify problems, you address them, and you move forward. And you're always going to need coalitions. You're always going to need people to work with. And I think I'm ready to do that. I want you to know that I will be there for you.
Thank you. We'd like to thank our candidates for Congressional District 2, Mr. Amadei, Mr. Evans, Mr. Everhart, and Mr. Knight. We will now have a 2-minute, very brief recess to reset the table for our next panel. Thank you. All right. All right, we're going to get started with the next panel. If Pat Hickey is in the room, will you please come forward? Or if you're in the lobby and can hear me, or if there's a representative for Mr. Hickey that's here tonight. If not, Mr. Carter, you may be it. Okay. So we are going to start with Mr. Carter giving his 2-minute opening statement.
Well, for those of you who may not be aware, this is for the State Board of Education District 2, and my name is David W. Carter. District 2 is kind of convenient. It followed right after congressional discussion that you just had. The State Board districts match the congressional districts. So our district that Pat and I are running for is all of northern Nevada except for White Pine County and the Yerington and below section of Lyon. I am running to bring common sense back to the school districts. I have a background in education on the administrative side, finance, and so I'm hoping to bring some common sense not only to the state board but to the local districts also. I have a lot of items that I am against. For example, Common Core. I think we need to get rid of it and bring in some better curriculum. And I feel that if we do that, then we'll no longer be the 50th state in the nation. I would also like to bring my knowledge of budgets to the board. I hear all the time how there are very few folks who have a knowledge of budgets in any board, whether it's this board, whether it's any local school board. And so I think it's very important that we have somebody who knows how to prepare a budget, as I have for 25 years with school districts, and knows what a debit and a credit is. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts with you today.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. I'm going to ask the guys at the back, can I sit down and use this mic just so I can sit for this one? Thank you. If you don't mind, since we only have one person here.
That's fine.
All right. What will you do to improve K-12 education, Mr. Carter?
Well, the first thing I would work on is work with the legislature to remove Common Core from the state requirements. Common Core is a continuation of No Child Left Behind. It dumbs down the curricula of the students and of the education system. And if we replace it with better programs such as that Massachusetts has, then our curriculum will improve.
Thank you. Vocational education provides an alternative pathway for students not wishing to attend college. What is your position on this? And if in favor, how would you implement and fund it?
As far as funding, I'll start first. Right now, most of the vocational ed programs are going through the community colleges. Now, we have very good programs for students who are gifted and talented and want to graduate early with an AA as the same time that they graduate with their high school degree. I would like to see that, and some programs have started like that with the vocational ed. I would like to see more of that so that a student could graduate and perhaps be a journeyman as a carpenter or some other trade. And so that they would have that same type of advantage. So I'm very much in favor of coordinating with the community colleges and higher education for that program.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Do current programs meet the needs of gifted and talented students? Why or why not? And if not, what would you propose?
Could you repeat
Sure.
the question?
Do current programs meet the needs of gifted and talented students? Why or why not? And if not, what would you propose?
From what I have seen, I believe that they do meet the majority of the students that want to go forward. As I was saying before, with the students that are in the programs which are with the community colleges where they could graduate with an AA as well as their high school degree, it puts them that much further towards getting their bachelor's or further education. And so I think it's a very good program. I think on an individual basis there may be failures, but that would take working with the student and the teacher to find out what is missing and what can be corrected, and then possibly bringing those to the state board and being able to make recommendations to the legislature.
Thank you. What is the most important job of the State Board of Education?
Well, as it stands now, the board is supposed to basically adopt the policies and procedures that are meant to facilitate the laws passed in NRS. But I would like to see it further enhanced by bringing more accountability to the school districts with oversight, and also more recommendations to the legislature on being proactive rather than reactive with education.
Thank you. Do you support public financial support for private and religious schools?
I would have to say yes and no, and here's where I'm coming on that. I support the ESA program. I think that parents have the responsibility and duty to their children to be able to make the decision as to how the ESA funds are spent. I don't think that that is the responsibility of the state board or of the local school district, other than ensuring that these standards are met by whatever program is used, whether it's a home study or whether it is an online program. I do believe that there should be oversight with that, but other than the oversight, I think it is a parental decision, and I hope that the legislature and the governor are able to fix the problems with current ESA.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Do you support music and art education in the schools? Why or why not?
I do, and you may notice I have a very deep voice. When I was at college at Brigham Young University, I was part of the oratorio choir, a 350 voice choir, 8 parts. That means that there's 2 bass parts, and for those of you who can't figure it out, I was in the lowest bass part. And actually, there was only one other in the choir that was as low as I was, and he was over 6 foot, which brought a lot of laugh because I was the shortest in the choir of the men. And just as with music, I believe in arts, and I would think that that would be a program similar to the vocational ed, if we could have training in that, if we could have something in culinary arts, any of those areas where students have creative ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Recently, it was reported that Nevada tested 51st in the ACT college prep exam. Are you concerned? And if so, what is your plan to improve Nevada's scores?
As I said in my opening remarks, I am concerned, and I feel that it is the biggest part of that has to do with curricula. And I feel that the Common Core is a big part of that. If anyone has looked at the Common Core math, it's insane. I'm an accountant, and it drives me nuts. And looking at the history examples where they don't spend much time talking about the founding fathers and spending so much more time on the latter day presidents and history, I think it's important that we teach the beginnings so people understand the Constitution.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. This question is pretty much just a little expansion of what you just said. What parts of Common Core do you oppose, and how do you think Common Core has harmed students? Do you have any further comments on Common Core?
I'm not against standards, so from that standpoint, I do agree with what Common Core was trying to do. But I believe that the way they are going around it and the way that they are using it to almost teach to the test, I think that that's a big problem. And as I said before, I have a real problem with the math and a real problem with the history.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Since you were the only candidate, we've kind of gone through our questions and the time. So we'd like to just let you have your chance now for your closing statement. You have 1 minute to add any additional thoughts you'd like to the audience here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. At the last debate that I attended where Mr. Hickey did attend, he said he was proud to be part of the group that passed the largest tax increase in history of the state and what it was doing for education. If I recall correctly, he said he had started in the legislature in 1998. Well, I think that's a little late when you wait that long. If we have been at the bottom of the barrel for so many years, the money should have been spent earlier, and we should have found programs that work. Obviously, Common Core is not working. We need to find something better. I would ask that you would all look at my name. I'm the first one when you come to State Board of Education, District 2. Thank you very much.
We'd like to thank Mr. Carter. We're going to take a very brief recess to reset for the next, I think it's, what do we have next? Board of Regents, I believe. Oh, okay. Okay, is Sarah LaFrance here? Oh, great, thank you. Come on up. Get through there. Thank you for coming tonight. Oh, those lights are so bright. I know. Yeah. All righty.
How are you?
I'm good. You have questions for these?
Oh, boy, these are weird chairs, too.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. Just want to warn you both that you need to speak right into the mic. So
Okay.
All the way
the men
forward.
sometimes
Okay.
lean back.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, okay. Low. Yeah. Yeah, good. I got it.
I think
It's as low as it gets.
Okay. Am I on? Okay, thank you so much, audience. We are now going to have our Board of Regents panel. Carol Del Carlo?
Del Carlo. yes.
Okay, and Sarah LaFrance? Is that how you pronounce that?
Yes.
Okay, great, good. Thank you, ladies. All righty, so you know the format is we start with a 2-minute opening statement. So we will start now with Carol Del Carlo. You may
Okay.
have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
And she's right in front of me, right? Okay, thank you. Good evening, and thank you for coming, and thank you to the 4 groups that are putting this on tonight. I think it's very important for the voters to be involved and to understand the candidates and the issues. And I'm from Reno, Nevada. I was born and raised here, and lived here nearly all my life, except for the time my husband, George, who's from Virginia City, was served in the military. We moved 16 times in 22 years, and we came home, and we're home for good. And I'm running to be a strong advocate and a voice for the rural communities. This district encompasses 8 rural counties, including Carson, Churchill, Douglas, Lander, Lyon, Esmeralda, Mineral Story, and a small piece of Washoe County. This is a nonpartisan seat. I bring a collaborative process and negotiation skills. My career was spent with General Motors Service Parts Operations when they opened up in Reno in the late 70s. I hired in 1981, moved 6 times with them. With my husband's service, we moved 16 times in 22 years. I heard Chip Evans speak about being able to negotiate. I bring that skill with me. Nevada is poised to have huge workforce development needs. I see the Board of Education being an integral process to that with the different economic development groups to bring skilled workers to the table and have a synergistic process to where the educators and the different schools can work together to provide the companies coming in the skilled workforce that they desperately will be needing. And there's some problems with what's going on, and I think the biggest probably is going to be funding in the legislature, and it's always about the money. And I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Del Carlo.
Del Carlo.
And now, Ms. LaFrance, you may have your 2 minutes.
Well, I chose to enter this race because I'm very passionate about education. I've been involved in higher education for the last 14 years, mostly at the University of Nevada, where I've served on boards that emphasize fiscal responsibility, academics, and the most recent one is that's done at the university. I've also been involved in higher education out of the country in the African country of Ghana, where I've been involved in a scholarship program for gifted students of great need. And so I see higher education from different perspectives. Prior to that, I was co-founder and president of a software company for 23 years, where we started basically with an idea, and we grew the company into something that dominated its business sector. We employed hundreds of people, so I understand what employers look for when they hire people, and I also understand the importance of higher education. We had a pretty professional and technical group of people, and we really respected what we had from the standpoint of the education that our employees received. I see the state being in a very exciting place. It's transforming. The economy is very different than it was, say, 20 years ago. The companies that are moving in, whether they're in logistics, whether they're in manufacturing, are basically technical companies. And they're looking for employees that, number one, are professionally trained, but number two, have certifications in skills, licenses in the different trades so that they have a skilled workforce. I think it's vital that we make education parallel what's happening economically in the state, because it would be very sad with all this change and all these jobs if we didn't have opportunities for our own people. So I thank you.
Thank you. So I'll start with the questions. We're going to start with you, Ms. Del Carlo, and then we'll rotate. The Board of Regents oversees 2 universities, the College and Community College System and Desert Research Institute. Should the college and community colleges be split off and governed and possibly funded differently from the universities and Desert Research Institute? Why or why not?
I've been looking at that, and I haven't really taken a position yet, but I believe that you're better with a whole. You're going after the same pot of money basically at the legislature. The budget that they're going to be asking for next year is $889.6 million. So if you split off the community colleges, it's the same basically amount of money that they're going to have in the state. So I think that would be difficult. And there's shared services. Then it would be a pretty complex to figure out how to split off some of those things. And the community colleges and the universities need to work together collaboratively, because there's a need for both. The community colleges provide a bridge to the universities, and not every student's meant to go to the college, the university, a four-year school. And I think we would be better off. And I know there's going to be some bills next session, and I'm looking forward to hearing them and knowing more about it then and seeing what the pros and cons are.
Thank you. Ms. LaFrance?
Yeah, so the initiative to separate the community college system from the rest of the higher education system evolved during the recession. And during the recession, the community colleges really felt the budget constraints the most. That has changed. What's also changed is the Board of Regents now has a community college committee that focuses on the issues and works directly with the community colleges. And more recently, there's been talk about having a vice chancellor of the Board of Regents that focuses exclusively on the community. I think that from a fiscal point of view, if you separated it, it would be very costly, and we don't have enough money in higher education to begin with. I also think it's going to be very difficult to maintain continuity between students that get their associate degrees at a community college and then transfer into either UNR or UNLV and be assured that they're going to get full credit. So I would be basically opposed to the idea.
Thank you. I'm sorry to say, but you're going to start the next question, Ms. LaFrance. With two candidates, it gets a little interesting.
It's okay.
In the past, the Board of Regents has been described as a dysfunctional group. Can you tell us what you have done in the past to help a somewhat dysfunctional group work smoothly?
Well, it's hard to have done something not being on the board yet, but watching the proceedings over this past year, I think they are very cohesive. I think that the dysfunction a lot of times happens because the composition of the board is 4 members from the north and 9 members from the south. So there's a disproportion in terms of northern initiatives. It seems like there has been better continuity between those two forces. The only thing I would say is I think it's very important that the northern 4 be a cohesive unit, and I'm happy to say that I'm endorsed by all of them. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Del Carlo, go ahead.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Oh, sure. In the past, the Board of Regents has been described as a dysfunctional group. Can you tell us what you have done in the past to help a somewhat dysfunctional group work more smoothly?
Okay, I agree. Not being on it, you can't change anything yet. But I have watched the Board of Regents since 2014, when this opening occurred, when Ron Knecht became the treasurer, and there was some dysfunction definitely going on, and it evolves around the funding formula. It was the biggest problem. They changed the funding formula in 2011, because up to that point it was all based on enrollment, and the enrollment numbers favored, of course, the universities that have higher enrollment, of course. And they changed that with SB 341 to where it was degree completion, but the funding formula is still heavily weighted to universities because it's not as weighted for the certificate programs that are part of the community colleges, or the degree. They get certificates at the community colleges. So I hope to be a collaborative person. I agree with Sarah. The 4 that are in the north need to stick together because 4 versus 9 is pretty tough, but also the 4 that represent community colleges, which this position does, need to collaborate and be together too.
Thank you. Ms. DiCarlo, will you answer this question? Online education programs have helped all students, especially rural students, and have helped to be more accessible. However, FaceTime is also important as well. How do you see yourself helping rural and adult students let me try this again. How do you see yourself helping rural and adult students have FaceTime and class time opportunities?
Well, this goes back again to the funding. I was in Hawthorne last week, and they had a branch of Western Nevada College there, and they don't have to rent anything. Their public buildings provide it, so all they have to do is get students and get an instructor. And with the terrible funding cuts that the community colleges lost, 1/3 of their budgets, that these were eliminated. The Fallon campus went from 1,200 students down to 400. Fernley lost their classes, so I think online is a terrific way to learn and to go to school, but we learn in different ways, and it'd be really great to get back into these communities. There is a huge, huge need in these small rural towns for instruction, and I think it can be done if we just get the funding formula more evenly weighted for the community colleges.
Thank you. Ms. LaFrance.
So I think there's various models to online learning, and everyone thinks that you're going to sit in front of a computer alone and have to be very self-motivated. I think a really good example is actually a high school I visited in Gardnerville. It's called Acclaim. It's a high school for kids that are on their last legs. I mean, they come from very dysfunctional families. They've been expelled from school. This is it. This is their last opportunity. And the classrooms there are tables, and there's computers around the tables, and the students sit in front of a computer, and they work at their own pace because they come from different backgrounds. Some of them have not been in school enough. And there are facilitators in the room. So if they have a question about something technical, if they have a question about the subject matter, there's someone there to help them. I think that's a model that we should really look at for the rural areas, providing, as Carol said, a place that people can go to and learn online, and either have a facilitator or perhaps actually be dialed into an actual lecture and take advantage of the classroom environment as well. I think it's really important, and I think we really need to embrace everybody in the state, not just the people who are close to a school, but people who are far away from them as well.
Thank you. And Ms. LaFrance, you'll start this one. What are the biggest challenges to Nevada's higher education system in the next 4 years?
Funding is always a big problem. As we grow, as we get new industry and companies, as we look to the community colleges, more so than the universities have a wonderful place and they train professional people, but a lot of the jobs that are coming in don't require a 4-year degree, and they are not something that a high school graduate can qualify for. They need more than that. And I think being able to fund those programs and fund them properly is so important because it's our economy. It's the future of our young people. It's the future of our returning veterans. It's the future of people who want to move into the new economy. And so I think it's always been a concern. How do we fund it all? It's a concern K-12, and it's definitely a concern in higher education as well. I would hope this year the legislature's focus is on higher education, and I would hope, as Carol said, they look at the way the funding formula works and figure out a way to make it so that we boost the state's economy by providing more money and more resources to the community college system.
All right.
Okay.
Ms. Del Carlo, sorry.
Yep,
I'm in trouble with
no
your name
problem.
tonight.
I agree too with Sarah. We've been to some forums together already, and funding is really the huge issue, and especially in the next 4 years. We're poised again in Nevada to boom by population, jobs coming in, housing, all of that stuff. And it's going to take money. And where do you get it? You go to the legislature. And there's just, as a native Nevadan, it's really sad that our state doesn't value education. And I think it's a cultural thing in this state. Why are we satisfied being 50th K through 12? I think it's really horrible. and for businesses that want to come here. That's been a major problem, bringing companies in. Now, the governor has addressed that issue with his Office of Economic Development, where he's brought in all these business leaders trying to figure out those problems. But I think we're going to have to do a lot more private business partnerships. It works really great up in Elko with the mines. They have Newmont and Barrick design classes together, and I think with Tesla, Faraday, we're going to have to rely on private businesses too to help with that funding.
This is our last question, and then we'll have the wrap-up.
Okay.
And we'll start with you, Ms. DiCarlo. What would you do to lower the cost of a college education? If you're elected to the Board of Regents, what would you do to lower the cost of a college education? Sorry, whoever wrote this question.
Okay, in Nevada, we actually have a very reasonable tuition, and one of the things that is working very well is the Jump Start program. If a high school student graduates from high school and also takes Jump Start, they've just received a 2-year degree, so you've just cut off 2 years of your education costs so that you can then either go to work or you can then go on to the university. So that's a savings of 2 years of college. As a parent, I tried very hard with my niece, who I raised for 3 years in high school, to convince her to qualify for that Millennium Scholarship. She just quite wasn't there. I mean, that's a wonderful thing Nevada students have that provides $10,000 a year. And we are very lucky. The average student that comes out of our system here in Nevada has a college debt of $22,000. And I think that's a figure that we really should be proud of. So.
Thank you. Ms. LaFrance.
Yeah, I agree with everything Carol said. Jump Start is an amazing program, and it eliminates 2 years of college cost, and it also puts someone into the workforce faster. And with the state growing the way it is, it's important to have a workforce as quickly as we can develop it. I also think that the option of a community college for the first 2 years is an interesting way to reduce the cost of school, because it's roughly a third of what the tuition cost would be if you went to a university. And in a lot of cases, students can live at home, so that reduces the cost even more. And like Carol said, our college university costs are lower than the rest of the country, and there are many different types of either scholarship or funding programs that can be applied for. I don't know if it's if students in high school get enough advice on that. I think as a regent, I would want to make sure that every opportunity that a student can have to reduce their overall college and university costs are available to them.
Thank you. Ms. LaFrance, we'll let you go first with your 1-minute wrap-up. Anything you'd like to cover that hasn't come out tonight that you'd like to say to the public and the audience here?
Okay, well, I thank you all for coming. I think I talked a little bit about my background. I have a business background. We had a software company, but we never took any investment money, so I really do understand how to budget, how to figure out what's important. I think that's vital in higher education because budget is always an issue. I understand higher education from both a national and an international standpoint. I've been involved in higher education for the last 14 years on many different boards with many different people. I've been endorsed by most of the relevant people within higher education. I bring to this job an energy and a passion. 14 years of dealing with higher education, to me, being involved in the Board of Regents at this time is so exciting because of what's happening in the state and the impact we can make today and on the future. So I ask for your vote, District 9, Nevada Board of Regents. Thank you.
Thank you. And now candidate Ms. Del Carlo.
Thank you. I'm Carol Del Carlo, and I ask for your vote. I hope to represent and be a strong voice for the rural communities. I know Nevada. I know all the players at the legislature. I've been politically active my whole life in this state. And I think it is based a lot on relationships. And I understand what it's like to negotiate, to bargain, to compromise. Those are all the skills I had to do in my job working with the UAW, who was our workforce. I truly believe Nevada's poised for greatness again. We're going to expand like we've never seen before. Maybe some of us aren't going to like that, but it's happening whether we like it or not. We need to make the best of it. And there's no reason why we can't have the best education system here in Nevada and be proud of what we have. And even more companies are going to want to come. I mean, most of you maybe weren't born here. You got here as fast as you could. And I really believe that when students succeed, Nevada's going to win, and we're poised for greatness. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the candidates, Carol Del Carlo and Sarah LaFrance, for Board of Regents. Thank you very much for being here tonight. We will take a very short break, and I would invite the Assembly, District 40, to come on up, the candidates for the next panel. Hello, good evening. Welcome back to the panel that will be running for Assembly District 40. I'd like to welcome the candidates, starting at the end, Michael Greedy, Al Kramer, and John Wagner. So we will start with the opening statements. Michael Greedy, since you're in the number one spot, you get to start. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Michael Greedy. So, of course, the campaign slogan is Get Greedy for AD 40. But as your representative from Assembly District 40, which is Carson City in the southeast corner of Washoe County, I promised you all to answer the telephone and read your emails. I promise to lobby for your interests, including in the Democratic caucuses. I promise to attend all the caucuses and evaluate proposed legislation as being beneficial to AD 40, Northern Nevada, and Nevada. I am knowledgeable about the legislative process in Nevada and principles of economics. I get very concerned that we have short-term thinking in the legislature. Decisions made today affect K through 12, which is the 13-year planning horizon in the lingo, and for employees, it's a 20-year planning horizon. The expected issues are going to be the budget, of course. We're going to do a rerun at what's called vouchers. Education funding, as you've already heard, will be an issue. Other issues that are going to come up are the water wells and the state water engineer. We probably need to re-examine property tax valuation, the property tax system. I am a proponent of drop-in drug and health storefront facilities and like to have that be available throughout Nevada. And in terms of seniors, guardianship needs to be re-examining. Mandatory reporting and something called Medicare waiver slots, which is really technical but quite vital to seniors.
Thank you. Mr. Kramer.
Hi, I'm Al Kramer, and I'm running for State Assembly District 40. Growing up in rural Nevada shaped my character. The role models, the jobs, the experiences I had made me what I am today. Mainly from my father, I learned the long-term value of keeping my word and to give a full day's work for a day's pay and to always do my share and a little more of the work to be done. I graduated from Fernley High School and 4 years later from BYU. Then I served almost 5 years in the U.S. Army. When I separated from the service, I couldn't find a job in Nevada and ended up spending the next 15 years in Oregon, Ohio, and Southern California. During those years, I earned an MBA from Claremont Graduate School. I returned to Nevada in 1990. Since then, I've worked for the state of Nevada, and I spent 20 years as your elected city treasurer. Now retired, I find myself running for office again. I want Nevada to be a business-friendly state where existing companies can expand, where other companies will relocate, and where Nevada residents will feel free to start their own businesses, all while keeping our quality of life. I want our kids and our grandkids to have the option of a professional life in Nevada. Our education system needs to be of the highest quality from preschool to graduate school. We need a good training system in our community colleges for the new jobs coming our way. Also, we need a stable tax structure that will lead employers to believe they can have a long-term success in Nevada. Constant changes and higher taxes drive businesses away. I support open government and transparency so that you will know what your government is going to do before they do it. If I'm chosen to represent District 40 in the legislature, I pledge to give you the same quality of representation that I have in the past while serving as Carson City Treasurer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Wagner, your turn.
Thank you for having us here, and I appreciate it. I'm John Wagner, the Independent American candidate, and you'll see I have no notes here because I try to talk off my head. And I've done this for a while. I graduated from Sacramento State University. I have a BS degree in electrical engineering, and I'm a problem solver. When I worked for Sony, I saw some problems there as well, as big as that company is. They don't have too many problems, so they had a good engineering staff and so forth. Since I've been in Nevada, I spent a lot of time down at the legislature as a non-paid citizen lobbyist. Now, one of the things that our party does, and I want to promote very heavily here, is we do classes on how to be a lobbyist, how to do it in person, and how to do it at home online. So if anybody in the audience is interested, and you must be interested in politics or you wouldn't be here, see me afterwards. Give me your name and your email address, and I will make sure that you know when we're going to do the class. Normally it's the last Saturday before the legislature, so everybody doesn't forget what's going on. We do charge a slight fee for this in order to cover printing costs and transportation costs for some of our people. We do these classes in Reno. We do them here in Carson City. We've done them in Pahrump and in Las Vegas. So you as citizens can make a big difference. Now, I don't have any illusions of being a winner in this race. I can read numbers. I've been around a long time, and I can count the votes. But if you're interested in being a citizen lobbyist at home, you let me know. And also what we do is we let you know when the bills come up so that you can do something about it at that particular time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our first question for all candidates. And we'll start with you, Mr. Kramer. What is your position on the nuclear dump site in southern Nevada?
Nuclear dump site. I don't like the term nuclear dump site, and if it's a nuclear dump site, I'd continue to be opposed to it. However, if it was a let's take what is dumped there and turn it into something useful and make some energy out of it, then I could see that as being something good for Nevada. And it kind of depends on what you're going to build. If you're building a dump site, no, we're not a wasteland. But if you're building something that where people bring something that be recycled to us and we turn it into something useful, I could see that working. And if it also in my mind, if you get paid to take someone else's trash, and by the way you can make it something useful, I'll take that payment too.
Thank you. Mr. Wagner.
Yes, nuclear waste, as it's called. Is it really all waste? It's spent tubes from mines or whatever, but it can be recycled, a lot of this. I believe in France and in some of the other European countries, they actually are taking these spent cylinders and actually reusing them. So there's got to be a way to make some money off of this. I'm not a nuclear scientist, and I don't know that much about it, but I do know that you can do some of this stuff with it. And why don't we make some money? And if they're going to consider us a dumping site, then the feds ought to pay us for storing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Greedy.
I favor reprocessing fuel for nuclear reactors. However, we decided in the Carter administration we were never going to do that, and we haven't done it. Certainly, anyone that wants us to store waste material, recycle it, needs to pay a very high price for it, because one of the problems just took you into the weeds, folks. It's called externalities, where you have a system that generates costs that are not in the price of the system, and nuclear waste, hazardous materials are in that category.
Thank you. Our next question. Oh, no, did I give?
We got everyone.
We got everybody, great. Okay, so this next question is, what is your position on using taxpayer dollars to fund private or religious schools? And Mr. Wagner, you get to go first.
I don't really have a problem with it, because you're not really funding the school. You are funding the child who goes to school, Capital Christian Center. Now, I know what our costs were, and they're considerably less than what it is at the public school area. So what I would think, one way to take care of the problem is if you do finance part of the student, not the school, you give them, we'll say $5,000, and $8,000 is what the state allows. Well, take the other $3,000 and put it back into the school and start working on some of these kids that are falling through the cracks. This way here you solve the problem with overcrowding, and at the same time you're putting more money back into education, into the public sector. And I think that would work very well.
Thank you. Mr. Greedy.
I am completely opposed to using public money for private and religious schools as was proposed in the last legislature. I believe the Nevada Constitution specifically prohibits it. I think the workaround of giving money to the parent who can then spend it, however, is money laundering. If you were helping your local neighborhood drug dealer, your accomplice in shuffling the money around would also go to jail. I firmly believe in using public money for public education.
Thank you. Mr. Kramer.
I think there's a couple of issues here, but starting with the first one is the Supreme Court did just rule on this, and they did say it was not unconstitutional for money to be given to parents to be spent on schools that happen to be religious based. But that's only one issue. To me, it comes down to anytime you're giving parents a way to opt out where they are subsidized and taking their kids to private school, it seems like the kids who have the most education-oriented parents are the ones most likely to be taken out of class. And those are the kids who probably excel in class and probably are the ones who bring up the average in the classes and the teachers spend less time with. And so in a sense, yeah, you'd need an awful lot more money and probably extra teachers to teach those classes if those kids weren't in the class. Having said that, in all fairness, if I had my kids in a failing school, I would love to have a chance to take them out and put them in a private school. And if it was a religious school, I'd want to get them in a good school. And I think all the parents in Nevada should have that opportunity.
Thank you. Next question. Do you support the 2015 state tax package? What changes, if any, would you make to Nevada's tax structure? If you want to reduce tax revenues, what programs would you support cutting? We'll start with you, Mr. Greedy.
Okay, you have two questions there.
Or three.
Yes, maybe let's take it as two. I think you're right. This is
Maybe three I heard down the table.
so. Number one is, do you support the 2015 state tax package? What changes, if any, would you make to Nevada's tax structure? Let's start there.
Well, I'm kind of loath to jump into changing our current tax structure right away because I don't think it's existed long enough to see how well it works or doesn't work. Given that, I'm quite warm to Treasurer Schwartz's idea of replacing the commerce tax and the modified business tax with a corporate income tax using the federal tax returns. Then I do have an answer to the second question.
Oh, do you want to? Okay, so let me just read it, and then you can do that. If you want to reduce tax revenues, what programs would you support cutting?
Well, I think the budget process will have already balanced out available revenues, and if you've done your budgeting correctly, it's going to have all the minimally required programs for operating the state of Nevada. So I think the question is a bit illogical because it's assuming I need to reduce tax revenues right up front, and you should have already considered revenues while building the budget for the programs that you need done.
Thank you. Mr. Kramer, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay.
I didn't like the tax increase last time, and it wasn't the school portion that bothered me. It was the commerce tax. I think that is an example of a really poor way to design a tax, and especially since it didn't, in the overall scheme of things, didn't generate that much money. The rest of it, you know, regardless of what you say about raising taxes, when you're 50 or 51 out of 51 places for education and you need more money for education, yeah, you may have some problems with inefficiency and spending money in the wrong places, but when you're that close to the bottom, you probably some money is definitely going to be necessary, and we were spending every bit. And in fact, going forward, we've got some issues with Medicaid that are going to cause more money that we're going to have to try and get fined. So as much as I'm a no tax person, probably the biggest part of that tax increase was necessary, but I didn't like the commerce tax. And again, it's not like it's going to go away. The governor's for it, and he had most of the people who voted for it last time are still in office, so it's here to stay. And again, with budgeting, you've got, unless the governor comes through and says to the departments to cut your budget 10%, like as not, there's not going to be a way to change that.
Thank you.
I would say one more thing, and that is that Dan Swartz's idea on a tax, just like Mr. Greedy said, really does need to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wagner.
Yes, I worked to repeal it. I worked with some of the people to repeal it. The commerce tax part I think it's awful. I also don't like the so-called modified business tax. You want to have employers hire people, but then you put a head tax on them if you do hire them. So it kind of works backwards here. We should be paying people, if anything, to hire more people. I think we have a good workforce here in Nevada. Unfortunately, I think that they're being penalized. Now, as far as cutting expenses, there's one, my favorite one was called Family to Family. It's still there, but it's hidden in the budget. And what the things they do, and I really like this, how to sing to your child, newborn child. Now, do you need to have a class on that? And then my favorite one, and I never could understand what it did, it was called the Breastfeeding Support Group. What do they do? I got a new grandson. It's about 8 days old now. Great grandson, 8 days old now. He had no problem having to figure out how to eat.
Are you done? Okay. Mr. Greedy, what do you think about the ruling from the Public Utilities Commission about solar?
Well, politically, if you've been reading the newspaper, they made a very big mistake because none of those commissioners are on the commission anymore. There is a potentially serious economic question involved about whether subsidies are flowing. But in a utility system, there are subsidies flowing right and left and up and down all the time. Well, this is going to be a chance to tell you to vote no on question, or ask you to vote no on question 3, which is a constitutional amendment, which is a good reason to vote against it. But the real reason to vote against it, it's asking the legislature to do something about supporting solar industry, I think, and asking our legislature to do something like that in the future is probably not real wise.
Thank you.
Yeah, I gotta stop. I could talk on this for a long time.
Okay, you might have a few more minutes, or a few more seconds, right? Not minutes, seconds. Mr. Kramer, your turn.
Would you repeat the question for me?
Sure. What do you think about the ruling from the Public Utilities Commission about using I can't read the word, but about solar, I guess it is.
About solar. And what you're referring to is, in the past, we had a offset from your power bill based on the amount of energy you produced that you didn't use that you gave back. Okay.
Correct.
And what they're saying now is that we may buy it back, but we're going to give you just a fraction of what we said we're going to give you of the value. And I think the answer, I think they were wrong, but I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. The power company does take that power back in actuality and redistribute it someplace else where it's needed. And so they've transmitted it during that distance, and in fact, because it diminishes in energy as it travels, they've actually had to replenish it during that distance, and therefore they've subsidized, in a sense, that solar panel homeowner to the extent of that loss in power as it travels, plus they've had to travel it and move it. So my feeling is that, okay, a subsidy, buying it back is fine, and buying it back, but they should be buying it back at wholesale where they buy other power. And so it's a wrong decision, but it could have been fixed without doing the damage they actually did.
Thank you. Mr. Wagner.
Yes, the buying back of the power, I'm not sure what the rate was. I know that they charge us a good rate when we have to pay our electric bill. Now, when it goes back the other way, what are they getting paid back? Are they getting paid back more than what we have to pay? Are we subsidizing possibly their product, the solar business, basically, or the people using it? I don't know. I haven't examined it that closely. I know it's a real hot potato, and that keeps getting passed around. I don't have a good solution for that, but I think, it could be worked out. The PUC should be the one, I guess, that does that. And I don't know whether the constitutional amendment, Proposition 3, I don't think that's the answer either. So I have to agree with Mr. Greedy on that one.
Thank you. Our next question. As an elected official, will you support fair and equal treatment of the LGBTQ communities based on Nevada's laws? Mr. Kramer, you get to go first.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you. Short and to
You
the
know,
point.
everyone should get fair and equal treatment. Now,
I'm not saying you have to keep talking.
okay, I'll quit.
It just was so quick. Mr. Wagner.
I'd have to say yes. All people should be treated equally. I know we have in the legislature a couple of senators, actually 3 of them, who are members of the gay community. Senator Atkinson used to be a neighbor. In fact, I talked to him not too long ago and told him, hey, when you got time, come on down and we'll tip a glass of wine or two. So I have no problem with gays or lesbians. I met Senator Park yesterday at the legislature and said, hi, how you doing? Welcome back, and welcome to northern Nevada, and get out before it starts to rain.
Mr. Greedy.
I can only echo Mr. Kramer and say absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, this will be our last question, and then we'll let you do your 1-minute wrap-ups because time is rapidly running out on us. Do you think we can get one more question in after this one? Okay, well, they'll work on that, but this could possibly be the last question. I didn't expect the last round to go so quickly. Do you support automatic voter registration and/or do you support voter ID laws? Is there a reason to deny a citizen the right to vote? Mr. Wagner, you get to go first.
I do believe in the ID thing. I go to the bank, and every time I go to the bank, they ask me for my ID. And I always tell them, oh, yes, I forgot. I'm not voting today. I better let you see my ID. So I think a good way to prevent voter fraud is an ID. You can get the IDs for free. You don't have to have a driver's license, but you do have to have something, I think, that recognizes that you are who you say you are when you go to the polls. Yes, we want fair elections, and I think the only way to guarantee it would be with the voter ID.
Thank you. Mr. Greedy.
Nevada has an almost bulletproof system now. The ID is when you register to vote, you put your signature in a little block. Hopefully you all read the text above it, which essentially says, if you're lying to us, we're going to come get you. That signature is available at the voting site. The voting site has full authority to ask you for an ID if they need to. But I believe you when you give me your word that you are who you are. I don't need an additional piece of paper to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Kramer.
I think the public deserves the you got to feel like the system is true, that when you go to vote, that your vote counts, and that no one else is getting a chance to vote more than once or vote for somebody who's dead. You got to feel like that system works. And the only way you can personalize that is to show your ID when you go and know that everyone else has to show that ID. So whether the system, whether there's anybody abusing it or not, the only way to show that it's not being abused is to show an ID. And therefore, I'm in favor of showing IDs. And secondly, I think that every citizen should vote. And I think they're talking about having a way, if it hasn't already, and I think it has, that if you're a felon and you've served your time and you've served your probation and you've gotten back your rights, you can vote, and it becomes an automatic thing. I think that's good. People should vote. Once you've paid your penalty, you should be able to vote. So yeah, I'm for citizens to vote. I'm a little concerned with the ability of people who aren't citizens to be able to force the issue, and that's why IDs are necessary.
Thank you. So this will be our last question. What changes, if any, should be made on gun safety? And Mr. Greedy, you will start.
I'm going to answer this on the broader question that what we're trying to protect the public from is poor behavior by people who happen to have a gun. So gun safety is a bit of a misnomer. I believe there should be comprehensive background checks, but I think the state should pay for the checks, not the seller and buyer. Once the state pays for the background checks, it's going to be no big deal for people to go down and get it done. We need to further recognize that if you're going to do background checks, you've got to have background data. And I assure you, it's not like you see on TV where you tickle a couple keys and some bad guy's picture automatically shows up on the screen. It takes a lot of resources to maintain a database that's accurate and current.
Thank you. Mr. Kramer?
I'm going to have to echo a lot of what he says, but I'll go a step farther. The one area that well, there's two areas. One is you get a situation like Sparks had a few years ago where they weren't turning their criminal database into this repository of information so that it can be used for background check. So you've got to be able to turn that in to build that database. But the second one is we've got a whole area where it's illegal to turn in the information. If you're mentally ill, your doctor can't turn that information over to this database. He may have reservations, but unless this person goes out and commits a crime, there's nothing in the database about it. So that's something that needs to be addressed. I don't know how you do it, because frankly, just because somebody says you're mentally ill doesn't mean you are mentally ill, and you have to protect those people. There has to be a second way to verify, or a third way, or fourth way, and way to appeal those decisions. So it's something that hasn't been addressed, needs to be addressed, but I am in favor of background checks.
Thank you. Mr. Wagner?
Yes, we have background checks when you go up to a gun store and you buy a gun. If you go to a gun show and you buy a gun there, you go through a background check there. Now, they always say, well, there's people outside selling guns. Well, you know, I haven't seen that happen, but you can have that happen in front of a Kmart or a Walmart store. Hey, buddy, you want to buy a gun? Chances are, if they're going to buy a hot gun, they're going to buy it in an area where there's known traffickers of that type of thing. So as far as like this Proposition 1 they were coming up with, that thing is nothing. If I was to loan my gun to my grandson to shoot it, I would probably become guilty of a crime, and I think that is a crime. So I believe that in enforcing the laws that we have now on the books, and I don't think that's being done hard enough. So, but and if you happen to go through a CCW class, that's 120 days, and they shall issue in this state. After you got that, then you can go get a gun without having the background check again.
All right, that concludes our questions, so we will now have our wrap-up statements. Mr. Kramer, it's your turn to go first.
All right. Thank you all for coming, and thank the League for sponsoring this. I know you do it every couple of years, but it is a good, refreshing way to get things out. You know, my background, my degree, I had a minor in economics and a minor in accounting and a business degree, but I'm a numbers person. I've worked a long time with county numbers. I know local government numbers, finances very well. I spent a year in the state treasurer's office, and I learned state finance numbers very well. Did a lot of work on that to do. But more importantly, I spent 20 years here solving problems for people and for the local constituents when there was a problem to be solved. So I think I bring a lot to the table. And I've attended 11 sessions, been given expert testimony in each one of them. And I'd like you to remember that and vote for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Mr. Wagner, your turn.
Yes, I have no illusions that I'm going to win this race. I am, however, promoting our class. If you wish to be a lobbyist or know how to lobby, what basically I'm going to do right now is congratulate Mr. Kramer on being elected. Al?
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Mr. Greedy.
Well, I kind of object to Mr. Wagner's really bad joke. But I can share with you that I have more than 30 years working with complex materials. I too have been a witness. I've been a witness in contested hearings in my work in public utility price regulation. I offer to you that I will have an open door and an open mind. I have a plan for getting started, which is to immediately corner the Democratic caucus in the Assembly. I have at least 3 highly qualified people in mind to be my attaché, which I think is very, very important. Won't give you their names because they don't know it. I'm willing, more than willing to sit down and chat with you all individually, and the big thing that comes from forums like this is finding out what people are thinking about. Now, I also give training in how to lobby the legislature from the comfort of your own home, perhaps not as formally as Mr. Wagner is offering, but it is free, generally available at 2 p.m. on Friday afternoons at the Carson City Democratic Party office, 502 East John Street. And to prove that I really am sort of a junkie, I've been watching the special session on the internet.
Thank you. We'd like to thank our candidates for Assembly District 40 tonight, and thank all of you in the audience for coming out, and all of you that are listening to us on the live feed. Thank you very much. Get out and vote November 8th.